Two.
Hello there.
Hello. How you doing?
Hello, Andrew.
Hello. Lovely to meet you all. How are you both
Yeah,
doing?
lovely to meet you too. Hang on, can you see me? No,
Nope, not yet. Neither of you.
Start video.
Okay.
There we go.
There we go.
I've lost my background. Oh well.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. Yeah. How is everybody's day going? Good, I hope.
Oh, same old.
We're all in Sydney, so I guess
dear.
you get the answer.
We're all in Sydney, confined for the last 3 months and spending a lot of time behind the screen and so on.
Yeah. I hope it goes, it's not too much longer for you all, but it seems to be going forever, which is a real shame. I'm sorry to see. Yeah.
Where are you, Andrew?
I'm in Perth.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
You're in a paradise. You're in a paradise.
Yeah, a little bit of freedom here. I keep on interviewing people and everybody's in Sydney and Melbourne at the moment. And I feel so sorry because I'm like, yeah, I just went and watched a movie on the weekend. And everybody else is like, well, I'm looked down. I'm like, oh gosh, I feel terrible. But
you know what?
That's all right. You don't have to feel guilty.
Look, it's
lots of
one of
family
those
and
crazy things where, if we were totally honest, it could have been anyone, any state, because look how quick one mistake it got out, and it wasn't like regular COVID, that was for sure.
Well, that's
it
true.
didn't settle, it just kept getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah. But as
yeah.
long as you're all staying safe and looking out for each other, that's the main thing. Yeah.
Oh, look, we're
pretty lucky.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Now,
anyway.
I usually put these interviews out as an audio interview too, so as a podcast. And I listened to the one that you sent through, the NITV one, which was fantastic. That was a great discussion as well. But I guess what we'll probably do is start off, as I mentioned in the email, if there's anything that you want to bring up, which we've got a great list of things to talk about here, but if there's anything you want to bring up that I don't ask, just feel free to kind of spit it out and say, hey, what about this? But yeah, I guess what we'll probably start off with doing is, because this is an audio one, if everybody could introduce themselves just so people know what name to attribute to which voice would be fantastic.
Okay, yep.
Lovely. Well, I'm Andrew, of course. So thank you. Laura, if you want to start.
Okay, I'm Laura Sivis. I'm the producer of this project, and my production company is Courage Films, and I've worked in tandem with Sandrine to help get this project together.
I'm Sandrine Charruyer. I'm a director, producer, co-writer of Inferno Without Borders project, and I work with Laura Sivis and Sophie Lepowic, who's a writer.
Fantastic.
Hi, my name is Sophie Lepowic. I'm part of the team, and I've been co-directing and writing the project.
Fantastic. And congratulations, everybody, on the project, because it's a really deep, broad look at something that is going on in Australia right now that we need to kind of pay more attention to, which is, of course, the impact of climate change, but also the impact of listening to First Nations peoples and their traditional fire practices and things like that. Obviously, this kind of production, it comes out of the blue in a way. Obviously, we have bushfire season and things like that. But could you talk about the broad scope of how this production started? Because I understand that people were not exactly in Australia when it began, or there was a bit of an international interest in it too.
Do you want me to do that one?
Sure.
Okay, so we were essentially on the road to making another documentary, and our broadcaster on that project, with the fires unfolding in Australia, basically turned around and said, hey, look, we'd be really interested if you could, find us a documentary on the Australian bushfires. And in fact, rather than finding an existing documentary, we ended up doing a documentary on the fires. And rather than doing obviously a documentary about the devastation, it was really about looking more broadly around cause and forest management. It all came together very, very fast. We were just before, Christmas in 2019, and we're getting these phone calls, and we're like, really not, focused on jumping to a completely new film, and there was no time to raise finance or anything like that. But they offered a pre-so we just, sort of went, okay, let's run with it. And so Sandrine pulled the crew together. So they're a crew that have worked together before, and they got filming. So from the initial ask to actually being out there behind the cameras was less than a month. It was only a matter of a few weeks that they were out there and already, on the field filming and interviewing and all that sort of stuff. So it was pretty intense. So that's kind of how it all began.
Yeah.
But it was very, very fast. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, it's for something that was set up so fast, it's really quite expansive in what it covers as well. Could you talk about the decision to cover the First Nations people's practices of fire, traditional fire practices and things like that? Where did that come into the decision process?
I can answer to that questions. It came up because, first of all, initially, when I've been asked by the French broadcasters to shoot a story about a bushfire, there were certain things they didn't want. They didn't want the same story that we were seeing already, which was very much focused on animal victims, burn lands and so on. So they asked me to dig it out as something different, something a little bit with a deeper meaning, and that's it. So basically, I have absolutely no idea what sort of story I was going to to bring it up, because I was not there. My head was in the other project we were working on. However, what I did, I started to go to the climate change protest in January, and I met few people there who just moved me in many aspects. I met some victims from Cobagos who told me their story, and I met some Aboriginal people who were here and explained to me why they were contesting and what it should have been done if the government had listened to them. And that's where I heard for the first time the word coal burning. And I start to investigate from there. And I start to have a look and watch some Q&A, and I discover the leader of the UN community group, which is called Victor Stephenson, and he ran the Fire Stick Alliance. And I started to listen to all what he was saying. That was a big gong in my head. And I said, why we don't know about a coal burning? I've been living here for 21 years and I never, ever heard about the coal burning. And I asked my husband, who's Australian, did you heard about anything about the coal burning method? And he said, no, I have never heard about it. So it was interesting to see that there were some kind of ignorance, not only from the Australian audience, but also from the French audience, of course. So that's where it all started, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I must say, I like to think that I know what's going on in Australia and what the practices are and what we should be doing, especially when it comes to climate change. But the practice of how to deal with bushfires and protect the landscape and nurture it in this manner was new to me. I didn't know it at all. And that's one of the real strengths of this, is that it's not just a look at what happened, but look at how we can protect what's going forward. And it's not just something that we can protect over a year, it's something that needs to happen over years. I want to know from each of you your personal connection to this story. What drove you to want to tell this story?
I might start. I live on the bush, so I have fires in my backyard all the time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even, you know, as Sandrine pointing out, the cool burning, I mean, our house out where we live is used as an outpost for the firemen to monitor the fires in the bushland, because I live on the edge of a national park. And I'd never heard of cool burning ever. And yet I've seen them go out and do back burning and fight fires, you know, on a regular basis. So that obviously is quite a strong connection from my perspective of why is it important to learn a new way to manage fires. But also I think the other thing too is that we each have family and friends overseas, and they were all very, very invested in what was going down in Australia. All they could see was, you know, the maps where all the fires were, and, you know, there's these all down the east coast of Australia was just like a continuous, you know, band of fire. So it was about, you know, really looking at why Australia had come to this point, and also with our eucalyptus forests being exported to other countries, they're actually beginning to have the same problems as what we have, but they don't have any Indigenous wisdom or knowledge of how to manage eucalyptus forests. So I think that we've really felt that this story had, you know, a voice and a story to tell across, you know, the globe. I mean, there are eucalyptus trees from everywhere from South Africa to California to, you know,
to America.
Yeah, to America, obviously, yeah. And so it was really about, you know, showing how this knowledge needs to be, you know, extended to the wider community and also to the local community, because as we pointed out, a lot of us had no idea what cool burning was, yet we've grown up in this country and we've, you know, been to school in this country and have worked with the local firemen, and yet we still don't know, which seems crazy.
Yeah. And I will say as well that it became a big concern for everyone because, like in New Caledonia, they dropped the project we were working on and move on to the next because they have a fumes coming here from Australia to New Caledonia, crossing the borders and go up to South America and Peru. So we have to tell a story about it. I mean, and that's what influenced the name of the film in some point. Inferno Without Borders. There is no borders anymore. Yeah, and it's a big problem.
And the climate change issues obviously affect the whole world, not just locally. And the spotlight really is on Australia and how poorly they've been managing, you know, climate change and investing in it in terms of trying to reduce emissions. Yeah. So that side obviously was really important for us.
And for you as well, Sophie, as well. Well, what was your connection to wanting to tell this story?
I have to say that when we first went on the road, we actually had no story. We had no script, no narration built. We didn't know what we were going to tell. But what we knew is that we had a lot of questions. We needed to educate ourselves. So we found lots of people that we could interview, and we had like all those experts in climate and cultural ecologists and firefighters and the Aboriginal community. And we knew that we had lots of questions and we did educate ourselves. And when we gather all this information, I realized that we were not the only one who didn't know anything about those different kind of fires, how the land was managed. And so I tried to put the story in a way that it would be didactic and all those little elements would be introduced one at a time. So people would understand what's happening, what could have happened, why it's not happening. And so we were really giving definitions of what are the, you know, hazard reduction fires. What is that? Is it prevention fire? Okay, but how is it being done? What about the cool fire? It's also the same, it's a prevention. And then we talk about back burning. What is it? Oh, this is when the fire's already there. And so there's all those elements that we had no idea what it was. So it's quite a challenging and complex topics to explain. And we were lucky enough to meet all those people and come across success stories about when coal burning fires were done and did protect some areas and not others because they were not managed the right way. So then I knew that the story we had a story to tell, and we wanted really to give the voice to the Aboriginal community and make sure that that knowledge would be shared. And I hope that lots of people will learn from it, because we did. Like I was just very, very, very happy to know that we really had a story to tell. Because, you know, when you live on the road and you got your camera, you got the car, you got all the gear, and you got to go and shoot, but you never know you don't know what you're going to bring back. So, and we were building the questions and more questions between interviews. We were talking in the car. We were a small team of 4. So we had Sandrine, we had 2 camera and myself, and we were just like, okay, did you hear what the person said? Or we should ask more about this and that. And that's how we've actually managed to gather all those information to be able to deliver something, hopefully that, you know, bring a lot to everyone watching.
Let's talk about the actual shooting process, because you're shooting in some really difficult territories, and the demands and requests of you to shoot in really dangerous areas is quite intense.
Well, at the start of Sophie's asthmatic too.
Oh gosh, yeah. How did you manage that, Sophie? Hopefully you had all the right medical things that you needed to keep yourself safe.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, you know, we couldn't really go to any area that would be dangerous, because you need permit and everything to learn to shoot. If you want to shoot on actual fires, you can't. You just really need to ask to have permit. So what we did go after. So we still had smokes everywhere, but most of everything was already burned, and it was really shocking to see that devastation. And as we were building the film, we've had to gather lots of archive footage to, you know, to make it look and show people how it was really happening, and get that sense of emergency. So yeah, it was quite challenging, and finding somewhere to stay, and because we were on the road for 10 days and we were going up north, and we had to change our plans because new fires were burning. So we couldn't go that way anymore, and we had to change direction and interview other people that we were supposed to meet 3 days later. And so it was very, very challenging.
Yeah. I understand you drove more than 2,000 kilometers as well, which is insane.
2,000 kilometers. And another thing, as Sophie mentioned, it's been quite organic and decided intuitively what we do day by day. Plan change all the times. And for example, we didn't have any firefighters, and we were still shooting, and we didn't have any firefighters. Sophie knew someone who knew someone who was a firefighter, but she couldn't reach him, or she couldn't. They were all busy still. It was almost at the end of a bushfire, I would say, but we were facing some quite blazing everywhere, and the smoke were still there around. So that was continuing, but in some area, specific area, and some road were not accessible. So Sophie was saying, I can't reach him. And I said, we cannot have a story if we don't have a firefighter. So it was very stressful in some point, because as soon as you hear the interviewer talking, we will say, okay, we need this and we need this and that. But that was purely intuitive. We didn't have a script to follow. So it was really, and when Sophie come up and say, I got him, it was like, oh my God.
We've got to say that we've been very, very lucky, because every person we've interviewed have told us, oh, if you want to know about this, you need to talk to this and those persons. So we were just calling, when we were on the road, we were just calling, organizing, like writing questions. Everything was happening in the car, on the spot. We didn't sleep much.
Yeah, I barely sleep on this project, to be true, and we all did. And we were swinging between producing and directing. That was quite a thing, because, you know, you have all this line of conduct to have as a producer, but you also have that creativity part of you who want to emerge as a director. So for me particularly, there was a balance in between both, and it was really hard for me to keep a focus in somewhere. But we did it, and then that is brilliant. And thanks to all the interviewees we had, they were quite amazing and unexpected for some of them. They were not even in my list, and then they come on board, and they've been very brilliant. Such as Chels Marshall is one of that woman. I barely spoke to her on the phone, and she said, "Come along, it's fine." We came along, and she delivers such a wonderful interview, and such as everyone. Everyone has been very much, very, very honest, authentic, and useful in some point for us. I was quite amazed to see that overall, everybody believed in Aboriginal method, traditional method. Everybody, every single person we asked what they were thinking about, they were all approving, and they were saying, we don't know why they're not allowed to do anything. They are the experts. Yeah.
One of the things which I find really interesting as well is that I don't know about you, but whenever it comes to discussions about climate change, and majority, like the inaction, especially from subsequent Liberal government on actual climate change itself, the immediate emotion I feel is anger and frustration, because I'm like, well, this has been a decade of inaction, and we keep on building, digging more coal mines and things like that. I find this film really inspirational and hopeful in a lot of ways because it touches on those Aboriginal practices. But I'm curious for you, each of you, how you deal with the anger of the inaction of climate change, and how you manage to imbue something like this with hope. Sorry, it's a difficult question, I know, because it's a
personal question.
I think there are hope, because all the persons we interviewed, even the firefighters, they said they do know it's the right way, and this is being introduced. It's too slow, but it's happening. So we just need to make it happen faster.
I think the other thing too is, as Australians who have, quite strong ties internationally, I feel embarrassed because you can see how much other countries are doing, and I feel, incredibly embarrassed that we are perceived as a community of people that don't care about the environment. We have some of, Australia has some of the world's greatest, natural wonders, and we're perceived as a people that just don't give a damn, and we're letting our government do this. That's how we're perceived overseas. And for me, that is incredibly frustrating, and it makes me angry and embarrassed, and you just feel powerless to kind of make a change. And then you come up against people who don't believe in climate change, or greenhouse warming, or all those sorts of things, and you just say, well, you might not believe in its cause, but you can't disagree that what we've been doing is adding to it. So, if there's some natural cycle in that, somehow the world goes through a cycle of ice ages and, hot periods, fine, but we don't need to add to it. Yeah. All of the pollution that we spit out into the world doesn't need to be added. So that's my thing. It's like, when I speak to people overseas, it's just like, oh, so embarrassing.
For me, it's a frustration. There was frustration, which is conduct anger, but frustration knowing that I raised my child here in Australia. My background is French, but I love Australia, and Australia adopt me, and I love Australia, right? And I was super surprised that this traditional method is one of the Australian patrimoine, you know, and why is not part of the education there in Australia? Why is not part of the history or part of the normal, you know, the normal things to do to protect our land and animal, and that was a big surprise to me, especially because as a French, we see French people see Australia. Sorry, my cat's come along. We see Australia as a land who's highly protected by the government, you know, hyper ecologist, very green, very
rules and stuff.
Yeah, and this is what we see from outside, you know. But when you're in a country, actually, it's pretty bizarre to do not have that in place. It's an Aboriginal country, and we all live here on this land, and we should know the land better. And it should be part of the education. And that's what we heard through the victims. They say that from a children perspective, but also from adults perspective. They have a house, big land, and they don't know how to manage it, how to protect it. So we hope this film will actually help educate people in that sense, and open a mind for other perspective who are right here on this country and on this land.
Well, I've certainly learned a lot already. And, you know, one of the things which I keep on seeing is there is this kind of, you know, I was reading about how the name of Fraser Island has now been changed, and that's great. And there is a lot of respect for changing the names of places away from the colonial aspect and back to the, you know, the names that it should be, the original names. And that's all wonderful, but there needs to be a little bit more. There needs to be more action done and following the Aboriginal methods of keeping this country safe and, you know, productive. You know, one of the things which I'm grateful that you touch on in the film, or one of the people you interview touches on, is the manner that we have different seasons. It's not just 4 seasons. There are multiple different seasons. And I think that, you know, here in WA, we have museums that have the seasons set out and explained, but the amount of people who don't know that that is the case at all is, it's quite sad. And so a documentary like this is really important and powerful because it informs not just Australians, but it informs the rest of the world. And this comes back to what you were saying before, Laura, where people overseas in America, where they have eucalypts and things like that, they can learn better practices because this is not just an Australian thing, it's a global thing. Can we talk about the release kind of strategy? Because this is, unfortunately, you've all been stymied by lockdown after lockdown after lockdown. So what is the plan going forward for the release of this particular film?
Well, initially, obviously, we've been getting the film into festivals as much as we can. And that's been very challenging because so many festivals have been cancelled, and with any festival or film market, every film has essentially a use-by date. If it doesn't get out into festivals within a year, nobody wants to take it out to festivals, even though the festivals might have been cancelled. So it's a bit of a strange beast. And similarly with, you know, when you take it to a market, they don't want a film that's too old. They want it to be current and what have you. So at the moment, we are currently going out to Australian broadcasters. We're hoping to get one on board. And while we had a small pre-sale in the French Pacific, we've got to find, you know, broadcasters internationally or streamers that would be willing to show the film. And they're not that easy to access. You know, the Netflixes of the world, they say, oh yeah, come to us. But then you can't even get an email. They'll never respond to an email. So it can be quite challenging. Yeah.
But we continue the film festival as well. We're still applying for other film festivals. And we've been approached by a great film festival, which is focused on climate change and in Brazil, because Brazil have the same issue that we do have. So, yeah, they're on fire at the moment. So that is the next step, and maybe here in Australia, we've been approached by another film festival director called Transition Film Festival, and they were interested to do a tour in Australia with this film, which is amazing. Now it's all depending on the lockdown situation, of course, and now the borders, if they're going to be open or not. But that was their plan, and eventually they probably end up online.
Yeah, I think.
I mean, the other tricky thing with film festivals at the moment, even though they might be an international film festival and you think, oh, it's online, great, people can watch it online, it's not actually the case. I attended Toronto Film Festival and Film Market just over a week ago, and we couldn't watch any films because they were all geo-blocked. So even though we'd love for it to get out and be seen, and on a wider audiences, with the geo-blocking, it doesn't enable people to see the film outside of the country because of the geo-blocking. So it can be a little bit tricky at times.
Yeah, I did find that a little bit frustrating. You see all these wonderful titles that you want to watch, and I was like, oh. But
yeah, there's literally no films to watch. I know, it was so incredibly frustrating. But anyway.
Yeah. I mean, this new age of streaming and things like that is supposed to make things a lot easier, but everything I hear is it makes it harder for filmmakers like yourselves to get your films out there. But I really hope that this film does reach a wider audience, especially as we head back into the same kind of season as it was in 2019 and 2020. And I mean, I don't expect you to have an answer for this, but one of the things that my partner and I have been, I guess, worried about and discussing lately has been, especially with the lockdowns in New South Wales and Victoria, is like, if bushfire season's starting up again, throw in a pandemic as well, how on earth do people isolate while there's a bushfire going on? It's just, it makes it even harder. And that's why I wish that these practices that are shown in the film were in place, because then it would make life just so much easier. It would save lives, clearly. Yeah. So
I have a discussion with Jill Marshall recently about that, and she said she'd never been so busy since the lockdown. Everybody want to do something about their land and then take a chance of a lockdown to keep themselves occupied, let's say, and being proactive and productive get prepared for their safety if and when the next bushfire season come along. So they seems to be quite more busy than ever.
Well, that's good to hear that they're getting prepared, of course, and things like that. Because, oh gosh, having another one of those kinds of bushfires, and they will happen because of the fact that we
absolutely
have, it's not a if, it's a when, and that's a devastating thing as well. As we kind of wrap up this discussion, and I really appreciate all of your time, because this is a powerful documentary. It's really important. Is there anything that you want people to know about prior to going into seeing this film, or if they're unable to see it because of distribution or anything like that, what they should take away from this particular film, or if there's any additional resources that they should seek out?
You need to see the film. There's no way out.
Well, the main thing is to say that the film is finally getting its release through the Melbourne Documentary Film Festival at the beginning of next month. So that's exciting. I mean, it was delayed 3 times because of COVID, so it's finally going out now. So that's, for us, that's exciting. And so we're hoping that at least our Australian counterparts can see the film and it can get out to audiences and get some word of mouth. And hopefully in the middle of that, there'll be an Australian broadcaster somewhere or a streamer there that actually gets to see it and gets excited enough to pick it up and put it on the air. That would be cool.
We may have one, but I can't tell yet. But let's cross the fingers.
Keep it under your hat, until it's announced. Yeah.
Yes, and if it's happened, that would be awesome, because then it would be publicly seen here in Australia, and in everybody can see it at that time. But yeah, that's what we can say right now.
Yeah. So the Melbourne Documentary Film Festival is going online, isn't it, in October?
Yeah.
Correct.
What I understand.
Yeah.
That's it.
And for 1 month, actually, from the 1st of October up to the 31st of October. So that's where we would take a chance to really spread the word and make sure that everybody watched it, being aware that there will be quite a lot of topic about the bushfire. But what makes the difference with us is obviously we are the only one who really focus on the coal burning and the Aboriginal community aspect.
And the forest management.
Yeah, so which is a bonus for us. I mean, it will show a different perspective of that bushfire. Yeah, so that's awesome. That is actually thanks to the team of Melbourne Documentary Film Festival, because they pull their hair all the time changing. It's a big work to organize a festival, and they've done a great job to try to make everybody happy, and and make the premiere for all the filmmakers in their film.
Yeah.
So for the next 10 days we'll be busy, publicizing the new dates, because that's the thing, is every time it gets delayed you have to do another round of social media and publicity to announce the new dates, and then it gets changed again.
Yes.
Hopefully,
been exhausting.
Well,
it's been very exhausting.
Yeah, that's the life of the indie filmmaker, though, isn't it? Like it's,
this is a little bit special.
Yeah.
Situation is indie filmmaking's always been hard, but you usually have a target, trying to hit the target with no resources, whereas this time you're trying to hit a moving target several times with no resources, which is pretty challenging. Yeah.
But you all look, you're looking happy about getting it out there and sharing it with the world, which is great to see. I know how exhausting these kinds of things can be. As you're saying, it's a moving target, and it becomes so hard. And I've talked to Lyndon a bunch about the Melbourne Documentary Film Festival changing dates and stuff like that, and I feel his frustration. I feel your frustration as well. And it's just, I watch all of these great films, and it's one of the blissful things about being on the media side of things. I get to watch all these great films, and then I sit there and I'm like, I really want to tell people to go and watch them, but until it's released at a festival, it's hard. But now it's coming, and I'm really excited because I can get behind Inferno Without Borders. I can get behind the other Australian documentaries and say, finally, everybody in Australia can watch these films. So it's great to see. Yeah.
And the online situation is not a bad thing in a sense, because you can reach a wider audience. Whilst if it's screened in a cinema theater, it will be more limited, and a bit harder work as well to get organized and get
because the audience has to be available at that time slot, whereas at least online they can catch it ideally when they can, sometime in that window of a month.
Yeah. And as you're saying, you've got a whole month to do it. So people who are listening can make sure to head along and go and check it out. I will make sure to share it as much as I can throughout October. I'm looking forward to being able to get behind the festival and your work as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew.
Well, thank you all for your time. I really appreciate it. Usually I do one-on-one interviews, and it's always a treat when I get to do interview more than two people, because it's great to have an array of voices all talking about the film and sharing your thoughts and stuff. So Laura, Sophie, Sandrine, I really appreciate your time. It's great.
Most welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank you so much.
No worries. Now I am going to get this live in the next couple of days or so. So once it's live, I'll be able to send it through to you and share it out and get people aware of what's going on with October and everything. So yeah, I'll send it on through in a short period of time. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Andrew.
No worries.
Great work.
Yeah, and I hope you all stay safe over there in Sydney and look after each other and all that kind of stuff. You have my heart from over here in Perth.
Thank you.
No worries.
Maybe we will be able to travel soon and then come and visit you in Perth.
Fingers crossed. I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, definitely.
Because actually, Sandrine and I were actually making we've got another project in development with another Perth. Originally a Perth boy,
Oh, good.
So yeah,
Oh,
so that'll be hopefully rolling next year sometime.
fantastic. Well, I look forward to, keep me up to date with it when it does happen, and let me know what's going forward as well. I'd love to be able to share what you guys do. Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent.
No worries.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a good
Bye-bye.
day.
Bye.
Bye.
You
Cheers.
too. Bye.